Am I audible? Hello everyone, this is Pooja Bua, and today's presentation is on the paper African literature, and from that I chose the topic sensory experience and emotional resonance in Gabriel Okara's The Piano and the Drums. Here are my personal information. So these are some questions or ideas I'm going to address in this presentation for address. First is what stylistic elements or techniques set this African poem apart from other African poems? How does the poet's use of auditory imagery and evocative language related to sound and sensation contribute to poem's themes and overall effect? Does the extended metaphor of the drums representing traditional African culture and the piano representing Western influence make the poem more engaging, impactful, or layered in its own meaning? And the idea that this presentation focuses primarily on the reader's perspective, what a reader can feel from this poem. So first of all, let us see what is sensory. So according to the article by David House and Mark Smith, these are two different articles, but they both say the same ideas. So I make a mixture of it and try to explain what is sensory. So sensory history is an approach that goes beyond just looking at text and visual to understand how all five senses, as we all know, sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, influence human experiences and meaning making in the past. So in this poem, I didn't take all the sensories. It is not in the all sensories. There are three main sensories in it, like sight, sound, and touch. So I explained that three and some of the emotion which came from this poem. So this approach was pioneered by anthropologists who immersed themselves in diverse sensory cultures, pushing historians to move away from the modern Western biases that prioritize sight and written text only. By examining how different senses were valued and associated with social factors like gender, race, class, etc., sensory history shed light on the complex dynamics of past eras. However, some historians risk oversimplifying this richness by trying to recreate or re-experience past sensation without considering their original meanings and power structures. So instead of just this trying to make dry slave by simulating modern imagination, robust sensory histories should interpret how bodily senses. In short, they say that the sensory, the meaning of sensory, somewhere change in history and in present also. So in this poem, the sensory and emotion get from a little different perspective, but here history explore how all five senses, not just sight, but mostly senses. So here are three senses, as I said. Let us first see about the poet of the poem, Gabriel Okara, and we are going to see that how he tried to explain this sensation in this poem. So he was a Nigerian poet, novelist, and playwright. He was known as first renowned English language Black African poet and pioneer African modernist writer. He also known as modernist poet of Anglophone Africa. Anglophone means a person who is also engaged with engage or identify with its English identity. Throughout his life, he credited his successful writing career to his experience at government college. This government college, it was there he got from got experience or inspiration from various writers like William Shakespeare and others. He got fame for his so many works, and in the end, he titled as the Nigerian Negritudist. The editor of his collected poems, Brenda Osby, says about him that it is with publication of Gabriel Okara's first poem that Nigerian literature in English and modern African poetry in this language can be said truly to have begun. Now, exploring further in his literary achievement, there are so many works, and he was honored with the Nigerian Festival of Arts in 1953. Following that, he also got so many fans and awards. Aside from his poetry and fiction, Okara ventured into playwriting as well. These are some other awards or honor that he got. Let's see about something about the poem and the drums. That what it is. So here, as we see, and there are two metaphors: piano and the drums. But here drums, normally we see that drums are in two types. One is like with all set, but here it is it expressed in traditional way. So a traditional drum is referred here. So in the poem, the piano and the drums, the speaker compares traditional African lifestyle with modern way. The poem is primarily divided in two parts, but in structure in four stanza. With the first celebrating village life, second recalling his childhood, third expressing his confusion about understanding Western ways, and fourth conveying the powerful effect of both cultures on the speaker. Somewhere we can find that through his expression of piano and the drum, he somewhere is little disappointed because the modern African society is changed from its past and traditional way. It is said in this poem. So the poem covers timeline from ancient era to contemporary times and emphasizes the influence of foreign culture on Okara employs music as symbol in this poem, and the poem gives the diminishing purity of African heritage caused by the encroachment of civilization. So let us see literary devices as it will be in the next slide. So I'm going to just say in the saying this short. So symbolism, as we all know, that symbolizes two element or two tools, piano and the drums. Imagery, we're going to see in detail next. Metaphor again is modern drums and piano in modernity and traditional way, explored with themes of cultural identity, colonialism, and impact. Contrast in this poem, as we know that contrast in two ways: piano and the drum, modernity and traditionality, again repetition, rhythm and musicality. This poem is how this line says a little about that how this poem is different from other African poems. That this poem is said or conveyed in a total musical manner. When we read this poem, we can see somewhere a musicality in it. The tone of this poem is nostalgic or contrasting at the same time. The tone of drums, the poem, the first part of the poem where drums are explained, it is give us the life or imagery of village life. And the contrasting piano gives us a modern life. So let us start with some sensory and emotional resilience. There are three sensories I explained, around four emotional ideas. So firstly, shy. I tried to explain through original lines. I wasn't able to find the original source, so I had to use treasury source for the original lines. So here first, I quote: "I see the panther ready to pounce, the leopard snarling about the lip, and the hunters crouch with spears poised." Again, in the next line, simple path with no innovation, drum action with the naked warmth of hurrying feet and groping hearts, green leaves and wildflowers pulsing. As we read this poem, we are able to sight all the scenery, or we are imagining all the sight or things which is in this. When we see that, when I say that there is a panther or a leopard is attacking a person, and a hunter shoot a gun on it. So we can imagine in our mind that idea. In the next, we see that this imagery of simple rough paths, it says that visual representation of more natural way. In the next, the green leaves, it says about a village life or a normal life. And it is symbolized green as a pure, original, or a natural way. Now, the second is sensory experience in sound. From these two lines, it is contrasting as again drums and the piano. So here was I hear jungle drums telegraphing, the mystical rhythm, urgent row, like bleeding flesh, etc. And second is then I hear wailing piano. So first we hear about the drums and the piano, and after that in this line the coaxing, diminuendo, a counterfeit, crescendo in contrast to the drums. The piano represents more complex, civilized, and distant sound. So here he says about drums and then say about piano and try to compare that both things in the next line. As we see that the piano is described as wailing, evoking a sense of sadness and longing. He said that the drums are like original thing and it gives us power. Where piano is a sad thing. He also tried to give terms like concerto, diminuendo, and crescendo. Here, diminuendo and crescendo are Italian words. The three are Italian words, but saying a separate thing. Concerto, as we all know, concerts, and diminuendo means decrease of sound, and crescendo means a growing sound which is in high pitch. The sound imagery serves as powerful tool for immersing the reader in the poem's world and evoking emotional responses. As we all know that when we heard something in high pitch, we got attention from that. And if someone is saying very in low voice, we are not getting any point, or we are not interested in that. So it is like that. Sensory experience. Next is touch. It is not descriptive in more manner comparison to sight and sound, but it is here in these three lines that my blood ripples turns torrent, wandering in mystical rhythm. The next is rough with naked warmth and hurrying feet. Again, the same line, but saying a different thing. So the description of naked warmth and dropping horse evokes the sense of physical sensation and touch. When we say the sensory experience touch, we didn't get a more idea or more emotion from it. But when we say that sensation of touch, the words are very magical in it. So here they also works like that. While touch is not as prominent as other senses like sight and sound in this poem, this intense where physical sensation is implied or suggested. In the poem, we can say that there is also a reference of about when he is walking on the path and he is feeling that path through his naked legs. So that next is emotional resonance. So these three are sensory experiences. Now emotions. Emotion here are in four manner: contrast and conflict, rhythm and musicality. So these are some lines I tried from to get this idea. First is I hear jungle drums telegraphing against them lines, but saying that the drums evoke criminal emotion tied to ancestral roots and cultural identity. Here he says that when the drums are playing, the poet gets the idea about this traditional value of African society. So it roots its ancestral roots and cultural identity, while the piano represents the intrusion of Western modernity. Like something is someone is coming illegally in our house. It is like that emotion. The abrupt ending of piano sound suggests frustration, anger, and unresolved cultural conflict. He again says that the sound of drums here in emotion, the sound of drum is very beautiful for him, and piano is sad and frustration type of thing. The big difference between the drums and piano makes the reader feel strong emotional tension, according to the poet. This tension connects to the difficulty of bringing together traditional ways and modern ways. Okay, so next is rhythm and musicality. In this line, from this line, we can see that the contrasting rhythm of piano's concerto suggests that a more intricate, sophisticated musicality that creates a sense of emotional complexity. And the next slide, he says that the repetition of mystical rhythm in the poem as well, and the blending of drums and piano suggests a lingering, wandering rhythm that leaves the reader with a sense of emotional ambiguity and longing. As we all know, when we heard the sound of drums, we all got like, yeah, it is the sound of drum, and we start thumping as well sometimes. But the sound of piano is more like emotional or like a flowing river. We can heard piano sound while sitting and relaxing as well. But somewhere it is contrasting from that. The blending of these rhythms at the end creates a sense of emotional dissonance and reflecting the inner conflict of reader and as well as from this poem according to the poet. Yeah, so I try to give my personal point of view on this poem. So fusion of sensories and emotion, my personal point of view. So this poem uses many description involving the five senses to convey somewhere. It is not all five, but somewhere little about smell and this thing, but it is not in big manner. So convey poetic feelings, lines like I see the panther and I hear jungle drums, engage the senses of sight and hearing, phrases like mystical rhythm, wailing piano and naked warmth of hurting feet evoke sound, sensation, imagery that steer the senses. By employing this vivid sensory details, the poet is expressing the emotional and inner experience. At the same time, the sensory description carry a deeper message about the loss of traditional ways and the acceptance of modernity. When we read this poem, we are not getting the idea that he is saying that piano is that. But when we go deep down in the read between the line, we can find that he says that piano is not as much as good compared to drums. So the reference of panther and jungle are more like cultural heritage. In contrast, piano symbolizes modernity. When the poet describes everyone getting lost in the sound of piano, as we all know, it shows the sense of disappointment from the poet point of view. But however, if we see our point of view, however, it also highlights how powerful and impactful the sensation of piano's music that everyone is getting lost. The poet seems torn between feeling let down by people's reaction, yet also recognizing the beauty and captivating effect of piano sound and sound that they have. The mix of sensory details, the emotional expression in this poem make us feel that it's magical and very interesting to read. Ultimately, this is fascinating how the combination of emotion and sensory description makes this poem feel unique and more engaging compared to other African poems. When music, some emotion, sensations are involved in anything, we are more attracting to that. Yeah, so this is all for my presentation. Here are my work citations. Thank you. Stage is open for questions.
So, Pooja, my question is that to you. How does any musical instrument represent a culture? Can you provide an example of a musical instrument that originated from one country but is now deeply integrated in another culture? You can give the example in context of India or any other country.
When we said about the example of musical instrument, I don't remember. I don't get any idea about musical instrument, but I can see some of the culture which are in the India are more on the outside of India. Like we can see that music. It is not totally musical instrument, but when we try to implicate it, it can be a musical tool. We can say dandiya, right? So when we do this dandiya, it creates a sounds which is more likely to heard from us. So the dandiya is more famous in outside country than India. So I can say I can remember that instrument, not instrument, but a tool. Yeah.
Pooja, how is music represented in tradition and how is the tradition represented in music?
Little question. But how is music represented in tradition, and how is tradition represented in music? This idea is more likely to see as we all learned about African literature in detail. I can find some of the African works, like the dance of the forest, as we all know that they play has so many ideas and implication about music, that how in the end that a person, I forgot the name, he says some of he sings some of the song which is like traditional in traditional manner but also conveys the idea. So I can find the representation of in tradition about music and tradition represented in music more likely, or we can find mostly in African literature, as 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 long as I know. Yeah.
Pooja, like while I was doing like listening to your presentation, one question came in my mind is that you mentioned about how African culture is represented by drum and piano by the Western culture. So, do you feel or think that the encroachment of Western values and Western people through piano is altering the importance of the African culture in the imagery of drum? Can you explain that?
It is like that. That is a line I forgot, but it is like in world everything tend to change, right? So in that manner also African culture should change. It is totally my point of view that African culture, in according to this poet, African culture has changed because symbolized as piano. That African culture is changing and it is not good. But according to my point of view, it is good because if some society or ideas change, it gives us new ideas and new values of it. So yeah, I can say.
Thank you.